Welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a wonderful week and that you got some good practice building analytic web apps in Python. I'm going to show you how to build this operational dashboard in using Dash, which is a platform to build very awesome dashboards in Python. Pure Python. You don't have to know CSS or JavaScript or anything. So this operational dashboard will allow you to follow the United States election results after November the 3rd. So as people vote on November the 3rd, and as in-person and mail ballots come in and are counted, states are going to be declared as which party won them, right? So if the Republican Party took Nevada, you can see here, you can click on the Nevada radio item, you'll see this turns red, and then the Republican Party gets a few more votes, specifically 6 more votes. If the Democrats won Texas, they'll get 36 more votes, that party, and Texas becomes blue. You can also change the legend. If you want to see everybody that's unsure, we're not sure yet, you just take Republicans out, take Democrats out, and you see the unsure ones, and so on and so on. So this is an operational dashboard, and an operational dashboard is used for daily operations. Sometimes it is people use it on a daily basis and several times a day, and that's how it's different than strategic or analytical dashboards that are not used as frequently. They're really there to monitor operations. So this is for the elections, but you can build an operational dashboard for other things like a business operation, the stock market, finance, and many different things. So in this video, we are going to, there's going to be divided into different sections. You can go under the video into the video layout and just skip or view the a section that you want whenever you want it. So just make sure to click on that on this time on the left, and you can see that section again and again. To start, I would recommend going into the link below the video and just download this code, right? This code is right here. Just download it to your computer and together with the assets folder, because it's a lot easier to follow along when you have it on your computer and you have your app up and running. Download the election py code, which is going to use. This is just a sample code. That if you want the assets folder, the CSS in here, this gives the red and blue color to the text here in the radio item. You don't necessarily need it if you don't want that color. And then the politics.csv Excel sheet, you can download from here, or you can go into the link below the video as well, and I share it on my Google Drive so you can download from there. So just make sure to put everything into one folder, this operational dashboard or whatever you call it, and then run it so you can have this up and running like this, the number, right? I'm just going to show you on Heroku because I uploaded it to the web. You can actually go into this link under the video and you'll see exactly the same thing. All right, so let's get started. Let's go to the Excel sheet, the Python. Okay. So the first thing you're going to need is to import these libraries. These are the Python libraries that we use in order to create this dashboard. If you don't have them, just go into your terminal. These are only 2 main libraries. It's you do pip install dash, and this will install all these libraries except for this, right? So if you you also need to install, after you install in Dash, make sure to pip install pandas. And and one more, actually, this one. You will have to install pip install Dash Bootstrap components. Oops. Right here. Dash Bootstrap components with like this. Okay? So if you install all of this, then you can run it. All right. So let's say we installed everything and now we get started. You can import the politics.csv Excel sheet into the pandas data frame. This is the first thing we want to do. And then we're going to start our Dash app. In the app, in the whole app itself, we are going to use the Bootstrap theme. The Bootstrap theme, it gives the app this kind of color and this kind of shape. If you want a different theme, I'll add this link below the video. Just look at all the different themes you have in here and you can choose a different theme if you want. Let's say you want a solar theme, which has these kind of colors and this kind of shapes of the buttons. Then just put in here solar instead of Bootstrap. Okay, but just make sure to do it capital letters. Everything has to be capitalized. So we're using the Bootstrap theme. You don't necessarily need this. This I need it because I uploaded to Heroku to the web, so you can use the link that I gave you. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do, this is divided into a few sections, this web app, with under 99 lines of code. The first section is going to be the radio list. We're going to build all these radio items right here. We're going to build them in this list. And then we're going to put this inside the layout. And then this is for the callback. We'll see that later. And then we're going to focus on the layout with Dash Bootstrap. And then we're going to look into the callback, which is what connects everything together. And build the graph inside the callback. Okay, and as I go through the video, I'm going to give you some tips, explain the lines of code, and also send you some resources so you know where to read more if you want to learn more about it. Okay, so the radio list. The radio list, the first thing we're going to do is we're creating an empty list, and then we're going to say, I want to do a for loop, right? And inside the for loop, I want to append to this list a bunch of HTML divs. So this list is going to consist of 12, because there's 12 states here, 12 HTML divs, right? And inside of each div, we're going to have a label and we're going to have the set of radio items. What are these two things? So these two things are exactly this. Let's make this a bit smaller so you can see. There we go. Oops. So you see how we have 3 radio items here. The label is here, right? You see the label is here, what we write down. And then we have the radio item, which is 3 radio items right here. Oops, the Democrat, Republican, and NA right here. DM, Rep, and NA. So these are the a group of 3 radio items. And then we're going to create this 12 times, so you have 12 different sets of radio items. Now, because each label is different, this label is Arizona, this label is Florida, and a radio item has to have different IDs. You can't repeat the ID. I'm creating a for loop, right? So what I'm doing with this for loop is I'm saying, take the S, the state, and take the V, the value right here, which this is just a copy paste. These are the values that belong to the pandas data frame. These are the values that belong to unsure, right? So Arizona, unsure has 11 electoral votes. So I just put the first one is Arizona is 11, the second one is Florida is 29, and so on and so on. So I'm going to loop over these two lists, and I'm going to say in the first loop, I'm going to say the label, I want it to consist of the first S, which is Arizona, and the first V, which is 11. So the first loop is Arizona 11. The second loop will be Florida 29. Right? And so on and so on. Same thing with the radio list. You cannot have the same ID for a radio list. So to create 12 different radio items with 12 different IDs, I just added the S here to change the name of the ID. So the first one will be AZ, the second one will be Florida, FL, and then Georgia, and so on and so on. So in essence, this whatever 15 lines of code is exactly like this. Open this long code.py that I gave you file, and you'll see I say here from line 13 to 45 in the long code, you'll see that pretty much what we have is just a radio list right here that has multiple divs. So this first div has the label Arizona-11, radio list Arizona is the ID. The second div has Florida-29, radio list -Florida, and so on and so on. I didn't write 12 of these, but in essence, it's 12 different divs. So instead of writing 200 lines of code, I just put everything inside a for loop. Okay? So this is the, you can ask me in the YouTube comments if you don't really understand this, but this is to allow everything to be in one line. By adding this display inline and text align end, I'm actually putting all of this in one line instead of one on top of the other. All right, so we have a radio list. We can actually see what it looks like if we open the terminal. You'll see here it's a div. Let's make this even bigger. It's a list of divs with children, and the children are the labels and the radio item. right here, and the radio item. And we have 12 of these, so this can go all the way to the right for like a mile probably. Okay. So we have our radio list. And now let's skip this for a sec because we're going to use this in the callback. We're going to put the radio list inside the layout, right? This is the layout. This is what defines the whole web browser page. So we're going to put the radio list right here, which is, again, just 12 different divs, right? Okay, so how are we doing the layout? The layout is always starts with an html.div. This defines the page, right? And inside this div, we're going to have two Dash Bootstrap row components. So we're going to have two rows, right? dbc is a Dash Bootstrap component. We're going to have these two rows. And in the first row, you always want to put, usually you want to put a column component within the Dash Bootstrap row. In the first row, in this column component, it's going to be 12 columns long. If you remember from other videos, your page, it can only be 12 columns wide, not more than that. So we're going to 12 columns wide of this column, and inside this component, we're going to have an HTML H1 with this text, US Elections 2020, that's in the center. So this is actually our title, US Elections 2020, that's in the center. You can't see it because it ends here, but it's actually taking up the whole 12 columns, taking up this whole space of the page right here, all the way from here, all the way to the left. So there are a few components here that you might say, well, what is HTML/H1? What is dbc.row? This, if you want to read more about it, I have videos that you can look. I'll put up here above my head on the top right, or at the end of the video. You can look at the video. You can watch the video tutorial on Dash Bootstrap styling and Dash components, which will talk all about these. But if you want to read about them a little bit more, just go into the Dash Bootstrap right here, open this more, and go into the layout components, go into the layout part, and this will talk all about the rows and the columns and how to align your stuff on your web app. As soon as it loads, it looks like internet is off, but it'll load in a second. Same thing with Dash core components. What you want to do with a Dash core components, the HTML H1, is you have to, it's considered HTML components. So go to this link below the video and you'll see a core component and you'll see HTML components. Open this and these are all the HTML components that are being used, that you could use. I'm using the HTML div right here and I'm using the HTML1, which is right here. You can read more about it in the Mozilla link here, but these are all the attributes that you have. Usually, there's not a lot to do with it. You usually just define the text that you want inside the HTML1 and then style it if you want, but you don't necessarily need to. All right, let's see if my internet loaded, Dash Bootstrap. If you want to learn more about the layout, perfect, the rows and columns, go into this link, which is the layout component right here, and just look into rows and columns and all the different things you can do with it together with the attributes. Again, you can also look at the video on the top right to learn all about Introduction to Bootstrap. I'll talk all about the rows and columns. The second row that we have here consists of the radio item list and the two graphs, right? So that's why you see here, there is one row on top is the US elections, the HTML H1, and this whole second row, which is from here all the way down here, consists of these three elements, the bar, the choropleth, and the radio items, right? So as you can see here, first we're going to have the radio items, and then we're going to have the graph. That's a choropleth. That's the idea we're going to give it. It's an empty graph, so there's nothing there yet. With the callback, we're going to put things in there. We're going to display a graph. It's an empty graph. And then this is just to take out the display mode bar. You change it to true and see what happens. It's just a mode bar. And then you define the width of the column components. So you can define width of the column component in two ways. You can just do width like this, or you can define width according to screen size. So this by itself does not mean anything. But if you compare it to others, the same attributes, XL to other XLs, then you can understand how the layout works. Brief explanation. I'm saying here that the radio items is going to take, remember, there's 12 columns. A screen has 12 maximum columns. So I'm going to say this first radio list or the group of radio lists, give it a width of two columns. I'm doing Excel because my computer is Excel. And the second, the choropleth math, give it a width of 6 columns, and the bar, give it a width of 4. So that's why if you see this as a large screen, you'll see this is 2 columns from here to here. From here to here, it's 6, and from here to here, it's 4, right? But this is a large screen. But if it's a small screen like a cell phone or a very small, if I shrink it, then you'll see that the radio items will take 4 columns, the graph will take 8, and that's already 12. So the next component, which is the bar, this is going to fall under because there's no more than 12 columns, and this is going to be 6 columns wide. So if I make this very small, like this, now you see that this takes 4, this takes 6 or 8, sorry, we said, yeah, 8, and the bottom here bar will take 4 columns wide. So this is how you use Bootstrap to make your app responsive to mobile layout or other screens that are smaller than a large screen on your computer. Okay, so this is the layout. If you have any questions about the layout, go under the video. Please feel free to ask. I'll do my best to answer you. Don't forget to like the video if you feel you're learning a lot so far. Subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications so you can learn more about Dash and how to create beautiful web apps in Python. Okay, so now we're going to go into the callback. The callback is what connects everything together. If I take this out, if I hashtag this out and run it, you'll see when we go to this is the website link, but if I go to the My Computer link, you'll see that it'll be, oops, it didn't save. Let me save it and run it again. You'll see that now these will be empty. There'll be an empty space for a graph. There'll be an empty space for a graph here and the radio items. And why these are empty? Because on the layout, all we have is an empty dictionary, is an empty graph space for a graph here and an empty space for a graph here. These are empty. We do have the radio lists, right, that we created above, right here, all these radio items, but they're just there. They don't connect to anything. They don't change anything. So this is just the layout. Now we need to create the callback to actually tie everything together. Okay, so let's look into the callback. In this callback, I'm going to use a regular output, and then I'm going to use a for loop to create all the inputs. Let's explain this more. First, the outputs. The outputs, I'm going to put 2 outputs. The outputs is what I tell the app to display. In other words, whatever I return this function, you see this function below the callback, whatever I return in this function, I'm returning 2 different figures that I build here inside. They are going to return inside this right here, the 2 outputs. If I have 2 outputs, I have to return 2 objects. If I have 3 outputs, I have to return 3 objects. So I'm returning the figures, and the first figure is going to return here, and the second figure is going to return here. But what is this? This figure actually belongs to the my choropleth ID, which is actually right here. My choropleth ID right here. So I'm actually going to return any figure map figure that I'm returning to this empty figure right here, right? Same thing with the bar plot. This should be actually histogram. With the histogram that I'm going to return from this one, the second object that I'm returning in the function is actually going to be returned inside here, right? Like this, fig bar. And it's actually going to be returned inside here, like this, fig bar. But it's you can't do that. You have to write it this way so it's not static and it changes as the user changes things. Okay, so this is how the outputs and the function return objects are connected. But you need an input. You need a list of inputs like this one right here, a list of inputs to actually filter the data and allow the radio items to change the data, the radio items chosen to change the data and build new graphs so you can actually display them on your web page. So how do we do that? What we do is, let me reset this, save it. Okay, what we do is we are creating an input list. How do we create this input list? This right here, right? Instead of writing 12 different sorry, not this one here, it's this right here. Instead of writing 12 different inputs with 12 different radio items, the radio item ID, remember the ID? This is taken from this ID right here on top. Florida will be the Florida, and then the value is the value attribute that is by default unsure, but it can change. It can be Republican, it can be Democrat. So instead of writing 12 different inputs, I'm going to do a for loop right here. This is what I do above. This is what I skipped at the beginning of the video. So the for loop is like this. I'm saying for X in all these 12 different states, which is in the pandas data frame of the unsure states, we don't know if they're Democrat or Republican yet. We're going to create 12 different inputs inside this list, inside the input list, which is empty. The first one is going to be, we're using the string formatting here, right? So it's always going to have radio list dash, but the first one is going to be Arizona, the second one is going to be Florida, and then GA, and then IA, and so on and so on. And they're all going to be the same value attribute from the radio item. So in other words, this is the same thing as this, an input list of 12 different inputs. I just wrote 3 because my hand got tired, but you can write 12 different inputs here. So I'm just taking this, in other words, and I'm going to put it, now that I created the list, I'm going to put it inside the callback right here. Okay, so just to see for purposes, so it's clear, just as an example, I'll just take this and I'll just hashtag this out. Okay, so we have 12 of these. First is Arizona, then Florida, and all that inside of here. So what I'm doing, now that I have the inputs, now I can actually say, take the 12 values, and you can call these whatever you want. I call them AZ, Florida, GA. You can call this whatever you want. These refer to the value here. Every one of them refers to the value here, right? And this value, remember, refers to the radio item ID. It refers to the component radio item, which is right here. Component radio item. This is a component radio item, and we're referring to the value attributes. So now it's unsure, right? By default, it's unsure. So the first one, there's only 3 options. Remember, there's unsure, which I put as NA, rep, or Democrat. There's only 3 options. The first one is going to be here, is going to be unsure. Okay, but you can't write it this way because then it's static. You want it to change. It could be Republican, it could be Democrat. So we're going to take whatever this value is, and then we're going to filter our data frame. We're actually going to change our data frame so we can plot it. So how are we changing the data frame? We're actually saying, take the state, all 12 states, it's going to be ST, and take all the radio item value chosen, this here. Okay, this is exactly the same as this. And then change the data frame accordingly. So what is this pandas piece of code telling us? This is very simple. What this is telling us is put the radio value chosen for the first loop is going to be Arizona for this one. Whatever value was chosen. Was it Democrat? Let's see, Arizona. Was it NA, unsure? Was it Republican, or was it Democrat? Put the first one that was chosen. Let me see why this is getting stuck. Okay, the first one that was chosen, let's say unsure, inside the party column. But in which row? You have to decide which row you want to put this in, right? This is going to be in the row where the state columns equals ST, which is the first one is AZ, right? And the second one, this state is going to be Florida. And this radio item chosen is going to belong to the Florida radio item as well. So in essence, what I'm saying is, choose this, the first loop is going to go over the first radio item, which is the Arizona radio item, and it's going to take the value chosen, which is unsure, unless the user changes this to Republican or whatever, right here. Take NA, or let's say take Republican, and then put Republican inside the party column. You see Republican goes inside the party column, like we said here. Put Republican inside the party column. But in which row? In the row where the Arizona state is inside the column, the state column. So in the row where in the state column equals Arizona, Arizona, right here, AZ. So here's where you want to put Republican. Same thing with Florida. In the second loop, it's going to take whatever was chosen. Let's say it was a Democrat. It's going to take that and it's going to say put Democrat inside the column where the state column where Florida exists right here. So put here Democrat, right? So that's how I changed the whole data frame with 12 different data frames that I'm filtering, which is pretty much like this. This is the for loop, right? I'm creating 12 different dff.lock and creating 12 different, updating 12 different rows of the data frame. It can be Democrat or Republican or unsure. They go inside the party column in this row, or in this row, or in this row. Okay, so I do that 12 different times inside a for loop. And now I have a data frame that's complete and that's updated according to what the user chose in the radio items. So every time we run this function, all 12 radio items are looped against, and then we have the data frame, and now we're going to build the graphs. Okay, we can even take a look here. So now how do we build the graphs? To build the graphs, first we're building the map, right? The maps, this is surprisingly easy because Plotly Express has very good documentation. I pretty much copy pasted this whole thing from Plotly Express page, and then I just changed the values that we set to this attribute and this attribute. So it's px.choropleth. We'll put the state inside location. We'll put electoral votes is going to be the hover name. So if you hover over this, you'll see 3, 5, 6, and so on and so on. And then party is going to be the color, red or blue or gray, because I set these colors. I want Democrat to be blue, Republican to be red, and unsure to be gray. And that's it. And now you have your choropleth map. So now that you have your map, all you have to do is copy paste this. You return this into the first object, and this returns, remember, to the first figure of the choropleth, which actually goes into here. So that's how you actually display, every time you run the app, you display the choropleth map. That's why if I change this from Texas, from NA to Republican, you'll see turn red, or you'll see turn blue, and so on and so on. And it also updates the bar chart. So histogram, sorry, this is a histogram. I always forget that. The histogram, what we're doing here is we're going to say right here, I should probably change this to histogram. We're saying, let's change this right now because it doesn't read right. If we change it to history, let's leave it. We'll just change it later. So we're saying filter the data frame because I do not want the unsure. I want all the data frame without the unsure rows. I just want Democrat and Republican because I just want to plot Democrat and Republican. I don't want to plot unsure. All right. And then take that and just plot the histogram, which again, I pretty much copy pasted from Plotly Express, these attributes, and I just changed the values. So X will be the party because I want the party to be down here. Y will be the electoral votes, the sum of them all together, and then the color is going to be party. I made sure that each color belongs to each party, and then the range is from, the Y range is from 0 to 350. From 0 here to 350, I want it to stay in that same range and not change. These two lines of code, I'm just updating this one. I'm adding a horizontal line. I'm adding this line right here, and the 270 votes to win is an annotation that I'm adding with this line of code. Okay, and then I have the fig bar. I return the fig bar again to the second output right here, and this returns into the empty space right here, which is why you have a fig bar or a histogram. So that's pretty much it. This is how you create a full functioning operational dashboard all in Python. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you get to use this. I'm going to share this link with you from Heroku during the elections and after the elections, so you can follow who's close to winning the 250 votes and winning the elections. And if you enjoy this, if you want to see more of these tutorials, just hit the like button, subscribe below, and turn on your notifications so you'll be notified every week when I create videos on Python analytic dashboards with Python. And that's it. Never give up. Always keep practicing. And remember, we are better together, so help each other out. Have a good day.